How do I see who's joining? Where's that at? Oh, there. Nice. Participants. I see you. I see you, participants. What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to do a little small talk here while people start to trickle in. This is my first webinar with JB Sales Training. I am super pumped to be able to deliver this. This is exciting for me. For those of you that have been watching me for a long time and that know John and Morgan, this is like a dream come true for me. It's like my dream job. I told JBarrows the other day that he's going to have to fire me. So I hope everybody enjoys this webinar. This is that thing that we all work hard for. People say, why do you build a personal brand? I can tell you that getting offered a job from JBarrows is probably the diamond in the cap for why you should build a strong personal brand. If there's a job out there that you've always wanted, a career out there that you've always dreamed of, your personal brand is what's going to help you get there. And today we're going to discuss a lot about steps to take to start that. So this is like the 101 version of how to build your personal brand. There is a lot of value coming your way about what it is to build a personal brand, how it affects your sales, how it impacts your pipeline, how it increases results, how your managers view it, how your company sees it from overall. This is all such a huge conversation. So everyone that's jumping in, let's jump in, man. I want you guys to be putting in where you're from. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to shout out your cities, your companies. If you've been connected to me for a while, I want to hear that story. I think we could probably build an absolute ton of great content around stuff like this webinar. There's been a lot of talk in the space about personal branding. I feel like this is one of those topics where you sit on one side of the fence or the other. You might be the type of person that is absolutely sick of hearing about personal branding. Hey, what's up, Annabella? Thank you so much for the comment. I appreciate it. Work for Redis Labs. That's awesome. 2 years based out of London. Hey, the UK. That's our spot. We spent a lot of time in the UK last year.
Yeah, I think we have 2 workshops. Yeah, I think we have in July, the week of July 7th. I think Morgan's going to be in London for 2 days for a workshop.
Okay. All right. Shout out to Morgan.
You might be going over there too, James. We'll see how it goes.
That'll be great. I'll tell you what, Annabella, we'll meet up when I get there and we'll have fish and chips. The best fish and chips that I ever had was in London. Hey, Tel Aviv jumping in.
So we have been talking about Tel Aviv. Good to see that pop up. Yeah. Alex, I'll reach out to you if we're looking for some help navigating when lighting up a new city for workshops. For us, it's always good to have just local friends to help find space, kind of get a good sense of what a good timing is. So I'll reach out. I'd love to get that done.
Yeah, what's going on? Look at Roderick jumping in. That's my dude right there. Roderick and I, we've known each other a hot minute.
Okay. All right, James. So just make sure. So everyone, as we go through, I may jump in. Hi, I'm Chris Merrill, CRO of JBarrows. I've been spending about 60 days now with James, working on getting him ramped up here and really working through. This is the first time on the personal branding. This is a piece of content that we were super excited to get from James. We spent a good part of the fall kind of really dragging it out and getting his butt into studio in Vegas. And we're gonna have a full course on this coming out in early spring here. So this is going to be 5 steps, 5 takeaways based on that training. Few things, and hopefully James will keep reminding you. The answers to your questions are yes, you will get a copy of this recording, and 2, yes, you'll get a copy of this deck. And I know 9 more people will ask me this, but I just want to make sure everybody got that. James, I think
I want to make sure we get as much value to everybody that's possible. So even after this, if you had something that you didn't get addressed or something that you put in the chat that I missed, please send it to me. We do want to interact with you. We're not the type to just throw a webinar on and then hope that we get a return on investment. This is for you. This is a personal branding webinar. So this is about your career as well as your pipeline. So let's talk big about the big ideas that you have.
If one of the attendees can do me a huge favor, just obviously with James' first time on this tech stack. There we go. I was just looking for a question so you can see it. So James, just want to make sure you can see the question there pop up.
Yes.
Cool.
Do people say what sales to you in the streets, CJ? Yes, they do. In fact, I have it twofold. It's become commonplace for me to go to events and just kind of walk around in the expo floor. And what people yell at me all the time is, we're the same person. And that's the best thing that I could get somebody yelling at me is, we're the same person. So to answer your question, they do yell stuff at me. I get say what sales screamed at me all the time, especially now that I have the shirts. People really see it and they start yelling and screaming. We're the same person. It's very gratifying. And I talk a lot about what it is for that stuff to start happening after you build a personal brand for a long period of time. So thank you for that question, CJ.
All right, James, why don't you let it run for a couple minutes, let people get in here. It's just 2 o'clock now.
Yeah. So again, people that are joining us, really appreciate it. Put your questions in the Q&A. Yes, this will be getting recorded. Yes, it will probably be sent to everyone on the list. I think that this type of value is something that salespeople are just now starting to really gravitate towards because they're starting to see that they have to invest in themselves. One of the questions that I often ask sales reps that want advice from me is, at one point in your career, you're going to have to decide whether or not you're worth more to yourself than being somebody else's output. And building a strong personal brand is what plants the seeds for you to become that entrepreneur mindset that we constantly see in our space being successful. So there's a lot to be talked about with regard to where your personal brand can take you. Are those sailboats? Yes. Yes, these are sailboats. I like sailboats. I'm from Miami. I spend a lot of time on the water. I love to fish. I like boating. I like scuba diving. I like snorkeling. Recently went to Jamaica and did some snorkeling. If you've not snorkeled in Jamaica, it's pretty incredible. And then we also toured Bob Marley's house. If you've never been to Bob Marley's house and you have the opportunity, screw everything else that's happening in your life. Go to Bob Marley's house in Jamaica. It's fantastic. All right. What I do want to hear from you guys on what you're looking to get out of this. 115 attendees right now. We have 115 different expectations, right? That's important for me to know. What are you looking for out of your personal brand? All you people that are jumping on right now are jumping on saying, I've got to learn how to do this. This is an initiative for me in 2020. Where's the roadblock? That's the kind of stuff that we can take and turn into content later that could help you. So if it's about where to find the time, if it's about how to get the relevance, if it's about content creation and ideas for content, those are huge blockades for people that are trying to build a personal brand and stay consistent with it. And we'll talk a little bit about consistency as we move on. Ideas for content, hands down. My man Ryan Hollahan at Ringlead. So content ideas have to be a mindset that we jump into and keep always on, right? It's like that hyper alertness. When I drive past a billboard that has something clever, something that I can relate back to sales, I am immediately writing it down, adding it to my list in my phone for a content idea that I want to develop later. And it's just the seed. And that way you can jump back into it and you can go, where did I get that idea? And then you can plant that in as a piece of content, whether it's an article or a video or just a strong point you want to make on a quick Instagram story. You got to spread that love out with great ideas so you're always looking in your environment for stuff to grab onto and add to that list. All three that you mentioned.
So I love this. Questions are already coming in here. Just make sure, just explain a little bit that we'll get to keep questions firing through this whole entire webinar. At the end, if you have some time, I'll even try or have Ollie or someone kind of just catalog and see if we can get some themes out of them and then just knock them down as you see fit. But what we'll do, I can already tell with your engagement and the rate at which questions are coming in. We'll try to knock through a few of them. But I do think what we'll do is we'll get you scheduled after this in studio to just knock through an hour of just, we'll get all the questions and then have you answer them and send them back out. So let's try to get as many questions in here as we can. I'm already seeing one of my favorite questions about this topic, which we have conversations with, is how do you build your brand without it being your full-time job, which the spin on that, and hopefully you get to this within the deck, is that it's one thing to say, okay, is it part and parcel to my job? Is it okay to build my brand within my job? How's that going to look like? How do I talk to my direct reports? So from that standpoint, that's a really good question that I hope, James, you come back and touch.
All right, so I have lots to say on that subject.
Well, I know you do.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share what I've got here, and we'll just get that deck seeing. So if you guys can't see that, if everyone can see it, if you can't see it, please let me know so we can figure out what's wrong. But I want to start with this. My name, for those of you that are joining me and don't know who I am, is James Buckley. I'm often introduced as James SayWhatSales Buckley. SayWhatSales is my personal brand. It is what has led me to the point in my career where I am now, doing this incredible webinar with all of you amazing people. So I am Director of Sales Execution and Evolution at JBarrows Training, JBarrows Sales Training. The reason I have that title is because we execute on the actual processes that we train on. So we're not trainers that come out and tell you guys how to do amazing things, and then we don't do those things. We do all of those things while at the same time evolving to find new things to give to you so that you can try it. That's the evolution part. And personal branding fits right into that evolution. In 2020, that is the name of the game. A lot of sales reps have been stepping forward and saying, building a personal brand is a definite priority for me in 2020. So let's go ahead and talk about our sponsors. I cannot thank these teams enough. LeadIQ, SalesLoft, DialPad, and WorkRamp. These guys are amazing, providing incredible tech. They truly care about your success. When you do business with these teams, you don't just get a product, you get a product, a service, and somebody that actually is invested in your success. That's a rare thing in our space. So thank you very much to our sponsors. Anybody that's never looked at these or seen what they can do, strongly recommend that you jump on the web, check these guys out. They're doing amazing things for salespeople everywhere. So check our sponsors out. Definitely cool. If you see me look over to this way, I've got my notes here, so that's why I'm looking over to that side. All right, so one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle here, and we're just going to run through some opening things before we get to those 5 steps. The biggest piece of the puzzle, one of them, is what's the problem and what's the reason to build a personal brand. And there are a few things to mention here, and probably a much larger conversation if we really pick through it. So the biggest thing that I hear is no one knows who I am, right? Why would I create content? No one knows who I am. Well, you have to create content so people know who you are. If they don't know who you are, then what reason do they have to give you the credibility that you need in order to earn a conversation? This is great because you've got to be able to be out there putting content together. You got to be able to be out there telling people what you do, how you do it. That does not mean you want to be out there pushing your product. We'll talk more about that later. Another reason to build a personal brand and another problem it solves is your results really do stink. They suck if you don't have a competitive advantage. You see this all the time in our space because in our space, there are a lot of apps that do exactly the same things. And you can talk to the sales reps that are at these companies and they'll tell you straight up, if they're using X, Y, or Z, don't even bother. It's exactly the same tool. Just move on from that company or come back to them later when their contract is up. A personal brand is a competitive advantage that could never be taken away from you. Once it's established in your vertical, in your space, you become a noted resource. And that brings me to the next thing, the next reason why you should build one. Prospects need to know who they do business with. Is it a resource, someone that they see as credible, someone that they see as important, somebody that they see can help them? Oftentimes, prospects start out as skeptics. Your personal brand really helps to remove that skepticism so that they drop their guard and they begin helping you and they start talking to you about what their needs and priorities are. All right, questions are pouring in right now. I love this. You guys are doing great. Let me get through this slide and then we'll hit one question. That's the deal I'll make with you. We'll hit a question after I get through a slide. So we're almost through this one. The last point of the problem and the reason to do this is that if we're not showing people why they should listen to us, man, they're just not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. We have to be somebody that they look to and say, I could talk to that person about this problem that I'm having, and they're going to give me the straight dope. They're not going to BS me. They're not going to frost it over or cover it with sugar. They're going to tell me what I need to hear so that I can solve this problem and put it in my rearview mirror and look behind. Now, before we move to the next slide, I'm going to hit a question, and I'm just going to go in order. Roger, what is your definition of a personal brand? Roger, I do have a slide for that, so hold on to that thought. Let's do a different one. Liz Sense says, how can I build a personal brand when my target market is marketing decision makers so I can become a resource for them rather than a salesperson? It's a great question, Liz. Liz is at ListTrack. We just trained them. Fantastic team. Anybody in marketing needs to be on ListTrack's radar. Thank you so much for having us out to help out your team and get some good best practices in. So the answer to your question is you got to create content and you've got to start talking their language in that content so that when they see that content, they will gravitate towards you, begin to like, comment, share. Sometimes they'll even reach out to you direct and say, I saw that video that you put out, or I read that article. If you're creating content around the industry that you sell into, what you're doing is slowly but surely positioning yourself as a resource for individuals that are also in that vertical. Also, you can use the same hashtags that they use to make sure that it shows up in their feeds. You can look at their language in their bio or their job description and start using those keywords in your outreach. There's a ton of different ways that we can use what we have available to us to create content that resonates with a specific vertical. So I hope that answers your question. Lots more to say on it, but we need to move forward. All right, this is for you, Roger. You're out there. You're asking for a definition. Now, I got to tell you, I was really tempted on this slide to add all of the multiple definitions that I've been given for a personal brand. And let me tell you that it's been vast. I've been given a ton of definitions for personal brand. I have one definition for my personal brand, and I'll tell you that it might not match up with what you think, but there is no set definition of a personal brand. It's personal with lots of different angles and avenues and agendas behind it. It means something different to everybody, but here's what it means to me. A personal brand is a public digital representation of your professional self. The reason that I put it that way is because I think that the way we represent ourselves online is a big flag up that says, talk to me or don't talk to me. That's crucial because that has to happen. People need to make that decision based on what they see before they decide whether to invest time in you. It's not about what they say, how they say, where they say, what they say. It's about the time it takes for them to say it. Your personal brand being that public digital representation of your professional self, that is what leads people to believe that you can provide some kind of value in their professional routines, their personal and professional lives, potentially just be a connection, offer some value. That is where it all starts. That's where opportunities, seeds are planted right there. All right, so that is the definition for me, Roger. If that definition doesn't jive with you, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think. I hope that answers your question. All right, so let's move on. This is another thing that I talk about all the time. Who does this apply to? Now, you'll notice that I have mostly sales reps titles in there. Business development rep, sales development rep, account executive or field rep, and a customer success manager. Now, you don't have to be in sales to have a strong personal brand. There are a ton of marketers out there that have beautiful, wonderful brands. Daryl from VanillaSoft is a fantastic example of somebody that's a marketer that just understands what it means to sit in front of a camera and talk to their audience like they're in their living room, right? That's super crucial for building that brand, a comfort level and authenticity. That's why BDR and SDR has to have a personal brand because it takes a while to build credibility. We have to build it super fast, and fast for a BDR, SDR at a cold account is like maybe 2-3 months if we're lucky. When you build that credibility by constantly being seen in their feeds and always talking about their verticals and their industry and what you can offer them and stuff like that, you gain the trust. This way, you earn the conversation, and it becomes easier to earn those conversations because you become seen as that valued resource. Once again, going back to the personal brand, providing credibility. An AE field rep has to carry that. So that's the next step in the sales cycle. They have to carry that all the way through to the finish line. So if an AE gets handed a lead that wants a demo from an SDR that has a strong personal brand and earned that demo, but the AE has no content, doesn't put anything out there of value, they're going to have a really hard time keeping the trust that that BDR SDR has built. And then finally, my favorite people in the world, customer success managers. This has been a traditionally forgotten role in sales when it comes to personal branding. And I think it's the most important personal brand that can be out there. Because if you're a customer success manager and you're not putting stuff out there that leads people to believe that you are interested 100% in their success, them getting a return on investment from your platform, the knowledge that you have being valuable for their growth and their development and hitting their goals, then why are you a customer success manager? Right? You need to position yourself as somebody that can help someone else succeed. And that is the reason why customer success managers have to have personal brands that complement the BDR and AE and overall company brands. We'll talk more about complementary stuff later. And we're through another slide so we can ask another question. So for those of you joining us, I don't know how many of you are currently on, but make sure you're putting your questions in the Q&A. This will be recorded. We will send it to you. I know I'm moving very quickly. There's a lot to talk about in a single hour, but know that you are out there. We see you, and we will provide all the value that we can for you. All right, so the next question that I am going to answer is from Jack Wilson. Jack Wilson says, how do you build a brand without it being your full-time job? This is a great question. If you can't find the time to turn your camera on your phone and send a message out to your audience on social media for 1 minute, you should look at some time management skills, right? The reason why people say, I don't have time is not because there's not enough hours in the day, usually. It's usually because the time management part has to be something that we keep in the back of our mind throughout our day. So let me give you a good example. I wake up at 5 a.m. and by 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, my inbox is empty. I've reached out to 2 or 3 people to follow up with them. I've hit all my Slack messages and responded to everybody. And I've made a video for LinkedIn to be shared later on in the day. That 1 minute video gets created 2 hours before it gets shared. So I try to manage my time so that if I know I have a minute to fill, I'm looking at my list that I mentioned earlier of all the ideas I have, and I'm executing on that, excuse me, right before my day starts. That way, it's a fresh start to my day, and I'm off and running to the races right when the day starts. Instead of getting in at 8 o'clock, sitting down and having that cup of coffee, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm finally ready to start working. You can do that. That's great. Listen, more power to the people that come in and do the 9 to 5 thing. I'm not judging anybody. What I am saying is that building a personal brand takes a personal commitment. It takes a personal sacrifice. If you want to win in the personal brand game, you have to invest that time in yourself. So that's the answer to that. I hope it answers your question. Let's move on to the next slide, sales and marketing alignment. Now, anybody that knows anything about sales and marketing alignment definitely knows that it's one of the most difficult things to master in the sales world because there's conflict between the two teams, right? There's just an enormous amount of tension between these two individuals that lead these departments. Salespeople want more leads from marketing. Marketing's responsible for getting those leads. Salespeople complain about the quality of those leads. So marketing has to make changes. And then, before you know it, there's an argument between the two leaders. Neither team is talking to each other. Sales take a plummet, and everybody's going, oh man, we used to be so great. What happened? Well, what happened is you lost that alignment between sales and marketing. Did you know that our days move so quickly and data is so readily available for people that before they even get to you, they're about 60, 70% of the way through the sales process. They've already done their research. So if you're that person that's out there creating content and you're leading that buyer to your content so that you can be a recent resource, you're the first person they're going to reach out to. You're a 1%er. You're the 1% that actually creates content. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. We have to be marketing ourselves as skilled tradespeople in our verticals. If we sell into the metal shop market, we need to know enough about metal to create content about metal so that the people that work with metal can go, oh, I knew that. I like that video. And when they like it, you can reach out. You can have a conversation. You can connect, right? That personal brand acts as a conduit for connecting if you're marketing yourself as that skilled tradesperson. So I love this. Everybody that follows me knows I'm a huge hip hop head. Been a hip hop fan most of my life. I put you down with OPP here now. OPP was huge for me. You know what, OPP? But this is other people's people, right? If you are building relationships with other people that have strong followings, and I don't want to use the buzzword, and you never want to use the buzzword either. Here's a quick tip. If you are building your personal brand, never refer to yourself as a thought leader or an influencer. Let other people refer to you that way, because you don't want to be that person that's out there being self-exclamatory about their success. Let other people hold you up. That's a strong personal brand, right? But other people's people are really useful because you need to take their audience and you need to make them your audience. So this is a great opportunity for you to build a relationship with someone that has a few thousand followers, maybe a few more than you, and you say to them, hey, I'm doing this great thing. Would you mind sharing this with your network? Now, I'm going to be real with you. You have to earn the right for this. This isn't something that you can just connect with somebody and send. And that happens to me a lot. People will send me a link. They've connected with me, and I've been connected with them for a day or two. And they'll say, James, share this. That's all it says. And then they send me a link to their latest post. I'm all for building people up, and I think that's fantastic. But to have a strong personal brand that really is meaningful, you have to earn the right to send something to somebody with a large following and say, help me advertise for this. That's essentially what you're asking. Help me advertise for this. Make sure that your brand is positive enough and giving enough so that those people feel inclined to help you win. That's part of personal branding as well. All right. Credibility we've talked about. I don't think I want to talk anymore about credibility. We know that it is definitely the thing to do when it comes to personal branding, earn that credibility. Let's get to the 5 steps, right? Here we go. The first step, get on the radar. And that might seem like something really easy to do. But as I mentioned earlier, out of the 6 billion users that jump into social media every single year, only 1% creates content, only 1%. So if you're looking at it from a large, like your ivory tower, and you see all these users underneath you, and you're creating content, think about how wide that audience is. It's such a big audience. You can pull people in left and right and say, thanks for connecting, thanks for liking, thanks for sharing, thanks for that thoughtful comment. Hey, thanks for sending me that referral, right? All of that stuff gets you on people's radar. You start talking about that vertical. You start talking about the problems those leaders solve. You start talking about those decision makers and what they often say to you. And you see people out there raising their hand going, I do that too. That resonates with me. Those are great people to reach out to, start a conversation with, and hey, maybe if you're lucky, you uncover an opportunity. That's super crucial. Step 2, did I jump one? I think I might have jumped one, right? Step 2. Sorry, guys. All right, so I love this quote. This is one of my favorite Benjamin Franklin quotes. Either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. So my step 2 is write and learn to write well. When you write well, it tells people that you are going to convey a point in a concise fashion. It tells them that you should be taken seriously when you reach out. That means that they're going to read what you say and they're going to expect that same value verbally when you guys connect. Again, writing well earns that ability to be heard. You want to write and you want to be relevant. One of the arguments I get from SDRs is this relevant in our space, right? We live in a digital world. I can just make a video. I don't have to write that. You're definitely not, that's not right. You want to write well because writing well, speaking well, delivering well, and being able to act in a professional manner is what's going to earn you the opportunity overall. So I have possession and conveying knowledge here because we've all had teachers. Everyone that's watching this webinar has been through some form of school or another. And if you haven't, you were homeschooled and your parents probably dealt with this in a totally different way, or even more so. But the ability to possess knowledge and the ability to convey that knowledge are not the same thing. And I think we can all agree that there have been multiple teachers in our lives that spoke way over our heads. It was impossible for us to understand what they were saying. And the reason it was impossible was because they didn't convey that knowledge in a way that we were able to receive it. They have that knowledge. They definitely have it, but they certainly don't convey it in a way that we can consume it. It's worth mentioning that no matter what you might think about whether or not writing is relevant, it's still the chosen way to consume content at the executive level. At the executive level. That means your decision makers most likely prefer to have something that they can read, something tangible, before they decide whether or not they're going to invest more time in you. Writing well puts people in a cycle. And I like to clarify this because there's no locked in way to look at this, but I find that it varies between marketing and sales teams all over the place. Writing is the top of the funnel for just about any cycle, but whether or not it's the marketing cycle or the sales cycle depends on your flow. And it might be a little bit of both. If you think about how we consume today, we have attention grabbers. We have things that we see that stand out to us. And then we go, oh, that's interesting. And we click on it. And then we read it. Now, let's be honest, right? We might scroll one, maybe two, but then after that, we're like, if it hasn't gotten our attention, we move on. So writing well earns the right for them to respond to you in kind. When you write to your prospect well, they respond to you well. And that's what you want. You don't want somebody writing to you saying, this is a long email and I still have no idea what you said. You're probably either not going to get that response or they're not going to respond positively to what you're after. All right, let's move on. So I think we're waiting, right? We decided to wait. Do we hold off on questions till we get through the content? We're going to hold off on your questions. So at the end, we're going to answer your questions. All right, this is step 3. Lose the fear. This is a big one for a lot of people out there, especially the new sales reps, right? Reps are deathly afraid. They're afraid of lots of things, like a deep-seated fear. Their fear of rejection from our peers, judgment that gets in the way of ideas and risk and knowledge that's shared. All those things are required for growth and very valued by leaders. So you can't be afraid to speak out, speak your mind, share an idea, and definitely don't be afraid to create something, right? Now, I'm not saying you should jump on there and talk about your company. That you have to earn that right. There's a lot of things we earn with our personal brands. That's a theme here. You can probably tell. They're also afraid of rejection. Rejection is such a huge thing. People don't want to be rejected no matter what, but this fear of rejection stops them from greatness. It holds them back from greatness. So I always have to ask sales reps, like, is what other people think really what's holding you back? Sometimes it's a fear of failure. Other times it's a fear of creation. They're afraid they might create something and then not be ready for it. Oh no, what if this thing takes off and I become, this is just too much. I don't know if I want all that, right? They wanted to build something small and intimate and private, and it went big, and they weren't ready for that kind of growth. A lack of fear, though, will leave space for that success. If you can remove that fear, you can definitely have space left to see all those wins come up. When you're creating content that's centered on success and positivity and growth, and you're putting stuff out there that are actionable tips about the space where people can grab onto that and improve their process or improve their results right away, that's success. And isn't that great? Don't you want people gravitating towards you in that way? That's what a personal brand does when you lose the fear. You also have to know that on the other side of the fence, the consumers are not afraid to watch. They're not afraid to leave a comment. They're not afraid to like, share, comment, make fun of, right? There's no fear in the consumer. So as creators, we cannot have that fear. That fear cannot exist in us. All right. Step 4, invest in yourself, right? This was a big step for me because I did a lot for free. I never paid anything for a long time when I was building SayWhatSales. It was all organic stuff. But then I found that I could create a business page on Facebook. And then if I had a post that was relevant to my ideal buying persona, then I could boost that post. For $15, I could reach 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. I think it's like $15 to go to a movie these days. I would rather spend that $15 and boost that post on Facebook and get 5 or 6 more opportunities in my funnel than go to the movies with my friends. I'll wait for it to come out on DVD. Cross-pollination, enormous. Don't limit yourself to spending time on just one platform. If you're putting content out there on Twitter, if you're putting content out there on Facebook, it all feeds back to LinkedIn, and so on and so forth, right? You can jump out there to any social media platform and create content. Gary Vaynerchuk, notorious for talking about TikTok. I'm still new to TikTok. I need the learning from that. So if you have TikTok tips, if you have TikTok tips, I want them, so bring them to me. You got to have the dough to make the bread. This is something I pulled from a rap song, but you got to have dough to make bread, man. Like that's just about as real as it gets. It takes money to make money. We've all heard that. If you've got a personal brand that's developed any kind of traction, you want to be able to dump $10, $15, $5 into a quick boost on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's loads of ways to do it. And if you need help with this, please let us know. We have lots of resources that we can pass off to for you to help build your brand. Finding those new mediums was enormous for me. In 2016, I made a promise to myself that I would start using LinkedIn more than at the same amount, if not more, than I did on Facebook. Look at what happened to me on LinkedIn. At this point, I've accumulated about 14,000 followers on LinkedIn. I never would have thought so many of you would care what I have to say, but jumping from Facebook to LinkedIn was a big driver for my success. You don't have to share only original collateral, right? You don't have to jump out there and put a video out every day. I do that, but you don't have to do that. You can share marketing collateral. You can share other people's content, other articles from other spaces, and then you can solicit your network for feedback. All the feedback that you get just feeds your pipeline even more. Here's another sensitive subject, right? And this comes down to prospecting, because prospecting is about telling and asking and finding out and digging. People do not have to agree with you. That's actually a good thing. I know that's tough for people to understand. Most people think, oh, I'm after the folks that really agree with me. That's not true. You're after the folks that are in that space. Whether they agree with you or not is completely irrelevant in the form of prospecting. Remember that this is about using your personal brand for prospecting. So new perspectives really do bring on new followers. You don't want to be that person that's asserting that there's a solution out there and this is what it looks like and there is no other solution, because the person that combats you on that is going to expect you to bounce back and say something, and maybe it gets a little ugly. That's not the brand you want. You want the brand that says, man, thank you so much for that feedback. That perspective is exactly what this feed needed. I appreciate your contribution to the post. That's positive stuff. All right, step 5. Tell your story. This is the last tip. Tell your story. People often ask me, James, where do I start? You start with the journey. You start with documenting how far you've came and how you got there. I think that if you're smart about it and you're building content from the time that you start at a job to the time that you get promoted or leave, then what you've done is documented what it's like to work in that space, what it's like to work at that company, what it's like to onboard. How much have you learned? People that are in that space, they're going to learn with you. They're going to grow and evolve just like you. And documenting your journey helps to inspire them. As you grow in your career, they're following you and saying, that could be me. And if you're a resource for them now, when they become VP of sales, they'll be a resource for you then. And that's the best kind of relationship you can have. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and been like, James, I've watched so many of your videos. All the stuff you put out has really helped me to become a sales professional. Thanks so much. It really means a lot to me. And I get a lot of opportunities. I get a lot of conversations, but those conversations are the ones that keep me going, the ones that keep me producing great content. When we talk about our journey, when people learn how we've won or failed or lost, what it essentially does is it lets them know that they're not alone. It lets them know that you've been through exactly what they've been through. And empathy is the most powerful catalyst for business. I'll say that one more time, write it down, take a picture. Empathy is the most powerful catalyst for business, and your personal brand is a vehicle for your empathy. All right, So that's step 5, tell your story, can't be afraid. So let's break those down one more time before we jump into some cool questions and really start getting engaged with our audience here. I want to hear your questions and you want to hear the answers. These are the 5 steps. Get on the radar. You got to be out there. You got to be consistent. Write and write well. If you need resources for writing, please hit me up. I have so many books to send you. Lose the fear. We cannot be afraid to step out of our comfort zone and put something out there with no fear of judgment or persecution or rejection. Don't worry about that. Step out of your comfort zone. Put that out there. Let people gravitate towards you. Invest in yourself. I can't tell you how much I probably would have done better if I would have invested a few dollars in my personal brand earlier. It waited until later and I truly got to see the results of that. And maybe that's a good move. Maybe I should have done it sooner. But I can tell you that spending $15 here and there to reach 4,000 people is definitely a good investment of my $15. And then finally, don't be afraid to tell your story. Document your ignorance. There's so much that we learn when we start a new job. We have to adapt to the flow, learn the product, learn the platform, learn the ICP, learn the personas, learn the pitch, learn how to provide value, learn how to position ourselves. Every time we switch jobs, we do this. And if you document that, other people that are going through that will easily gravitate towards your content and be able to ask questions to you. They'll be able to engage with your posts. They'll be able to do lots of different things that cause them to connect. All right, so those are the 5 steps. I do have a couple of interesting pieces at the end here. This is the number 1 question, right? Okay, great, James. I know now where I can start to build my personal brand. How do I turn this into pipeline? Well, the content that you create has got to be centered on your persona. What are the challenges that they deal with? What are their priorities? What are the things they care about? Did you read that in their bio, or did you look it up in their job description? Did you find it in their news release? That kind of stuff is the stuff that you want to start creating content around, and you can aim that content at that vertical and watch the people that struggle with that come back to you and go, I saw your video. I'd love a conversation. When are you free? And isn't that the best kind of email you can get back from a prospect that you've reached out to 7 times and hasn't gotten back to you yet? The answer is yes. Interaction is like striking oil. I say this a lot because most of the time we jump in and we consistently start interacting with people's content. I'm sorry, I got distracted there. We consistently start interacting with people's content and it's amazing. But then they start reaching out to us and suddenly we're like, oh, did I step in it right there, right? Interaction means that you've hit a nerve. It means that you said something that resonated with this person. Once that happens, you have a green light to reach out. You do not have a green light to pitch your product or service. So when you're doing that, what you come off as is somebody that creates content with the purpose of selling. While yes, that is definitely part of what we're doing, you want to be that person that's providing value, the person that's creating content because it's helpful, the person that's creating content because there is an enormous space out there of people that could use your knowledge, right? So the topics that you pick need to be problem or solution centered. Usually not both, because then it starts to sound really salesy and pitchy. Instead, pick the topics that you think are interesting and solicit your network for that feedback. Hey, what do you guys think? This is a problem I constantly hear. I had somebody the other day that said this to me, and I thought that this was a great solution, but he said no because he had this problem. What are your thoughts? People that jump in, have commentary, people that are experts in the field, reach out, connect, add them to your network. They then get exposed to your content long term, right? Building a personal brand is not a short game. It's a long game. It takes time to build pipe. It takes time to build a personal brand. All right. So that's it. Let's answer some questions from the attendees. And I do have some frequently asked questions, so I'll jump back over to those, but you guys can read them and definitely hit me up if one of them strikes your fancy. So one of them from Ben Savage, my dude Ben Savage from Africa, Mission Control. They are great. I've known Ben for a long time. We've worked together. Ben says, how do you generate ideas for content for your posts? So you have to develop a content mind frame. That mindset is something that's propelled SayWhatSales for some time. Every time I pass a billboard that has something clever on it. Every time I see a commercial or hear a phrase uttered that I can relate back to sales or content of some kind, I immediately jot that down, or I make a reminder in my phone. And I'll even pull it up here so that you, oh no, I can't because my phone is off. I don't want to be disturbed here. But I have a list that I always keep updated for blog posts and video ideas and collaboration and documents I need to start. And I just add to this list consistently all the time. And as I add to it, I wake up every day and I go, all right, what piece of content am I gonna knock off this list today? And that's the one that I do. Sometimes it's a 1-minute video, sometimes a webinar like this one. Super pumped about this webinar. This is the first one for me. So yeah, that's how I keep up with it. I'm always thinking about it. I'm constantly saying what's gonna add value, and then I'm writing it down and I'm executing on one of those every single day. So I hope that answers your question. All right. Again, Ryan Holohan here, right? What is a good time to put out content? Is it during the workday, during the weekend, during the better? You know, Ryan, I get asked this question a lot because the algorithms are kind of mysteries. Don't worry about that, man. Don't stress over the time. If you have a content mindset and it's always flooding your brain, I'm constantly getting stuff pushed into my brain for content ideas, you'll have enough content that it won't matter what time of day it is. And I think that's probably the point over the edge that I reached where I was like, you know, this is just like part of my routine. So I have a friend who talks about being unconsciously conscious. You've got enough ideas in the can that it doesn't really matter when you're going to post it. You're just going to turn your camera on and execute on that idea, and you'll see where it goes, and where it goes, it goes. Yeah, you could probably time it to be like, you know, I'll do it at 7:30 in the morning. That way, everybody that's getting up, having their coffee, consuming their content, will see this video and I'll get some better traction. But if you're out there putting content out just for traction, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? Put it out there because it's helpful. Don't worry about the time. Don't worry about the algorithm. Worry about the value. What value am I delivering? All right, Jamie Straw, what's up, my man? You are wanting to know, does a personal brand have to align with your professional one? In other words, does it matter if the company you work for conflicts, even in a small way, with your personal brand message? If you want to keep your job, yes, it matters. Can you create content that does not have to do with your work or job or function? Absolutely. This is a huge sensitive topic for a lot of leaders today. Again, I talked about marketing and sales alignment. Lead generation is actually a very interesting gray area when it comes to marketing and sales alignment, because marketing views leads as qualified leads, somebody that checked a box, somebody that took an action, somebody that opened an email, clicked a link, right? That's a marketing qualified lead. But our lead generation with our personal brand, it's human. It has nothing to do with the product, the service. It has more to do with the way that I sing. It has more to do with the way that I convey a message. It has more to do with the language that I used in my video. It has more to do with the article I wrote that provided a step-by-step solution to a problem that's common, right? That is completely outside the box when it comes to building that personal brand. So great question, Jamie. It's a sensitive topic. I think that your job should be your priority. Let me make that abundantly clear. People out there, do not create a personal brand to spite your job. That will end with you in the unemployment line every time. So that's the answer to that question. Anna, how much content should we create in advance? And what do you suggest in terms of the number of times we should post on LinkedIn per week? There's no golden egg here. There's no golden number. This is about you, your personal brand, how you represent yourself, what you're going to say, and how often you can provide legitimate value to your audience. So if it's twice a day, it's twice a day. If it's twice a month, it's twice a month. Silver bullets in sales and branding don't exist. Consistency is much more important than the number of times magically that we post on LinkedIn. If it's me and I'm you, I'm testing, right? A/B testing, something we do at JBarrows sales training all the time. A/B test for 1 month, put a video out twice a week. For the next month, put a video out once a week. Compare your results and see what got you more traction. My response to this question has always been, I put enough content out that the algorithm doesn't matter. And because of that, my pipeline is constantly full. My calendar is always jacked up with people that just want to talk. They just want to ask me questions. Well, that's great. I'm going to provide value to you in any way that I can. And in return, I'm going to ask if there's an opportunity here and you're going to help me uncover it. That's the nature of what we do, right? As personal brand builders. All right. So I have an anonymous attendee here. Anonymous, hello, anonymous out there. How do you see AI playing a part in content communication? What are your thoughts on a template or a roadmap for the personal brand from company to rep? Maybe there's a need for a multi-branded roadmap between personal and company. When you talk about telling your story, quotes, right? What if your story documents your struggles and you're afraid of it being taken as a sign of weakness from your company? Well, that's just another form of fear, anonymous. When we jump out there and tell our stories, our fear of persecution often stems from somewhere of an insecurity, right? That's okay. It's all right to be insecure. It's not as easy as people think it is to turn your camera on and jump out in front of hundreds of people, thousands of people. But at the same time, at some point, you've got to decide whether or not you're going to look that fear in the face and take that chance and tell your story, or if you're going to keep that in the vault. I'll be honest, I know a lot of people, it's best if they keep their story in the vault. It's best if they don't put themselves out there too far. There's too many things in their past that could come back and ruin it for them, or potentially cause them to lose money, lose success, lose an opportunity. Those types of things are really important to consider when you're building your personal brand. Not everybody has the luxury of building a personal brand. Some people are quite limited, but most people have the ability to build a personal brand that is separate from their job, separate from their function, separate from their career. And when you get there, you're in great shape. All right. So earlier, CJ asked me if people say what sales to me on the streets. Yes, they do. They do all the time. It's actually a lot of fun when they do it. My man, Nate Roybal, this dude's awesome. What about leadership building a brand? Where I don't know how effective it is now, long-term, as I grow my career, I assume it will continue to be more valuable. But without having direct prospects or accounts, it seems hard to track results or even know if I'm doing something right. Nate, the results let you know that you're doing it right. If you're not seeing results, then you should think about your brand and how you're representing yourself until you see the results you're looking for. Once you see those results, then you know that you're doing some good stuff and you know it's working. But those results are the indicator, always. So Brandon Beeler says, if we do a weekly video on LinkedIn or multiple platforms, is it okay to mix the videos up? For example, I talk about something industry related in one video, and in the next video, I talk about my personal development that isn't industry related. Those can be one piece of content or two pieces of content, Brandon. I don't think you're limited there, and I don't think you should put your brand in a box that says, every time I do a piece of content, it's going to look like this. Because that box is going to restrain you from being able to branch out, do new things, try other stuff, right? All of these personal brands that are wildly successful that you can think of, right? JBarrows, Morgan J. Ingram, Keenan, Gary Vaynerchuk, Mark Hunter, Anthony Iannarino. I think I said his name right. I'm not sure. All of these guys that are out there building these great personal brands, it took them time. And they used multiple platforms to get there. It's not something that I think we shut the door when we say things like, can I do it this way? You could do it lots of ways. There's no silver bullets in sales. There's no silver bullets in building a personal brand. So that's your answer there. It's about what's comfortable for you. It's about what works for you. Name a CSM with a personal brand. Dude, Zane, I can't. That's exactly my point. I don't think that CSMs spend enough time building their personal brand. And I think the CSMs that do that will see far more retention, and churn will go way down for their customers. Like, I imagine people coming to the table wanting to cancel, and a CSM having the clout and the pull to say, you're going to leave me? And this person's like, no, I can't, right? That's what I imagine. So Zane, great question. Name a CSM with a personal brand. I don't think I could do that. All right. Let's jump over to some of these commonly asked questions. I love this, right? Does your personal brand have to align with your professional one? We touched on that. In other words, does your company that you work for conflict even in a small way? This is a common question. Again, if you want to keep your job, you need to keep that in mind. Work within the confines that they've set for you. And you can be right, and you can be your personal brand, or you can be employed, right? That's the choice that you make. You need to have very, very clear instructions on how far you can go from the organizations that you work for. So I want to make that abundantly clear. You're not tasked here with going and stepping on toes and pissing people off. That's not a good thing for you to do. Should you do a regular cleanup for your connections on social media? So that, should you do a regular cleanup of your connections on social media to make sure that no one is conflicting with the messaging that you're sending out to the world, or does that matter? I have not reached a point in my career where I'm willing to let go of a connection just because I think they might be conflicting with me. Again, I think that other perspective provides other connection. So I'm always looking for that person that wants to conflict with me. I want that conversation. In fact, if I can, let's blow it up. Let's have it online, because I think it's an interesting one, right? So no, I don't think you should do a regular cleanup. Here's what I think. I think that if somebody's going to get removed from your network, they better have earned that in a way that you can prove. I think that too many people are doing the wrong things with social media. Those are the people that you can clean up from your network. So look for that sign. Look for that "are you married" question, right? Why are you asking me that? Don't ask me that. It's a terrible question to ask, right? That person can probably be removed from my network. All right, number 3 here. What is it about video that's all the rage now? I find that many videos quite amateurish, but they're still better than not doing them at all. I think this is a great question, but amateur videos have an ideal buyer too. So know this: every personal brand has an ideal persona that gravitate towards it. And every personal brand has a persona that typically avoids that kind of person, right? So just because you think that a video is amateur doesn't mean that there's not someone else out there saying, "Did you see that product? It was amazing. I need to buy that. How do I reach that person?" So don't worry about whether or not you're amateur out there. And if you're that person that thinks other people's videos are amateur, well, let's see your results. I'd love to compare. But they're still better than doing nothing at all. Absolutely. They're better than doing nothing at all. Having something out there that represents your company is absolutely crucial in our world today. We can't just ignore the fact that we have an enormous audience that we could potentially entertain and start conversations with. When your brand message is attacked on social media, what's the correct way to manage that? I adore this person that asked this question. Here's the way I handle it. Feel free. Come at me, bro. Attack me. Right? For me, I answer like this: "Thank you so much for that comment. I appreciate your contribution to the post." And you know what? I've been saying that for years, and I've never had anyone that was negative come back to me from it. And the reason they can't is because if you're out there putting positive into the world, the negative monsters that attack you just want to bring you down to their level. It's up to you to maintain composure and not give in to these people that want to drag you down to their level. Sometimes that means letting go of connections. Sometimes those connections are family members. Sometimes it can get uncomfortable. But when you're being attacked on social media, don't engage. There's no reason. In fact, you're better off to stay blind to that negativity and avoid the confrontation altogether. It's always better to have a conversation than it is to have a confrontation. All right, any other questions that I can jump in and answer? Let's check it out. Here we go from Chris Shaw. Anonymous attendee says, "Are you married?" I love you, dude. Whoever you are, I love you. That's funny. And yes, I am. I'm on my 2nd marriage right now. I'm hoping by my 3rd I've got it down. All right, Chris Shrum, I hope I'm saying that right, says, "James, whomst is your personal brand idol? Your all-time greatest personal brander, and why?" My personal brand idol is got to be JBarrows. I've been watching him for 5 years, and you know, the things that he says and the stuff that he puts out, it really resonates with me. Close second, Morgan J. Ingram. If it wasn't for Morgan, I would not have gotten so heavy into the SDR role. I probably would have done the traditional course, became an account executive, tried to run a sales team, you know, but I really fell in love with the SDR role because of Morgan and the show SDR Chronicles. Anonymous attendee, again, "Are you married?" Yes, I am. But that's my person. I definitely think so. Do you mind if we tag you in our LinkedIn videos? Please tag me in your LinkedIn videos. I love getting tagged in relevant stuff, but don't tag me if it's a picture of your puppy. That kind of stuff is crucial for your personal brand, right? People start tagging other people left and right. I know a lot of folks that will jump on and do a quick post and add some value, but then they try to tag like 60, 70 people. And then they wonder why that post is suppressed like hardcore. You know, leveraging other people's networks is awesome, but doing what you do in the way that you do it, you have to earn that right to tag people. Also, it helps sometimes to get permission like you've done here, Brandon. Can I tag you in my LinkedIn videos? I definitely think you could tag me. Anybody can tag me. Sai, what's up, my man? You say ignorance is bliss. I love that. Ignorance is bliss, especially in the personal branding space, because I don't think that enough people give themselves the credit they deserve. They think that what they have in their mind, in their hearts, in their soul, the message they want to deliver is not worthy of the attention that it is worthy of. And your personal brand definitely gives that to you. All right. I think that we are good to go. I don't have anything else. It looks like we're winding down, but I'll stick around for the next couple of minutes to see if anybody jumps in with some additional stuff. Let me go through here. Can you share a CSM you know with a great personal brand? So I did think of a CSM with a personal brand. Ryan Holohan, the Irish hooligan at Ringlead, has one of the coolest personal brands I've ever seen. The Irish hooligan is on Instagram. He's awesome. He goes and drinks great whiskey, smokes great cigars. That's my dude for life. Mad love to Ryan. He's got a great personal brand and is a fantastic CSM. So please reach out to Ryan Holohan. He's great. Anybody else? Love it, love it, love it. Wired. So here's a good question from Corey. Corey says, I've been building my profile and connections for 10 years on LinkedIn and need a new direction or branding makeover. What should I attack first? Man, I would have to know your brand pretty specifically in order to answer that question, but I'm happy to talk about it one-on-one. So we can definitely connect and have a conversation there. I think it depends on what you've done with it so far. Probably has a lot to do with what your goals are. So I'll need to know all that information before I can tell you how I would prioritize it. And keep in mind that I will be telling you how I would prioritize it, and it may not be the same for you. Here's another one. If you don't feel like you're good at content creation, how do you move past that? Chris Stinson asked that question. Chris, you know, content creation isn't for everybody, and you don't have to just be a video person or just be a writer. You could do great posts. You could do memes. You could start a LinkedIn group and just post funny photos and relate them back to whatever it is your vertical is. There are a lot of avenues that you could go and use your creativity, whatever suits you, whatever's strong, in order to build that content up. Ideas for content, hands down. I told you guys about that. I think that's it. I think that's all we got. So